What are the best and worst matchups for your wide receivers, tight ends, and streaming defenses for Week 18 in fantasy football? It's time for the starts and advice, rankings, and recommendations as we begin another matchup Thursday here on Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. We have our start sitcom up, my decider there, that looking at the positions by positions there, and giving you who I like this week in terms of the matchups, other factors that we want to play in Week 18 in fantasy football if we're still playing seasonal, as well as a little crossover to DFS. We'll get more specific into DFS on Friday's show, as we always do, Lineup Friday, looking at FanDuel cash games, DraftKings tournaments, of course, our prize picks of the week here for the final week of the regular season. Speaking of prize picks, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is presented by our friends at Prize Picks. It's also a crossover Thursday on the network as we break down all the games for you with our host for the opposing teams. Prize Picks is so much fun and it's easy to play. No competing with other players. It's just you versus the projections available. You just pick 2 to 6 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. You can literally take less than 60 seconds to enter. It's that easy. We love Prize Picks, and we know you will too. If you haven't got in on our advice there, do it there for the last week. We'll have some playoff fun as well with Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. All right, let's dive in here, and we'll start with our wide receiver no-brainer plays. These are the ones that you're just going to plug and play. Don't worry about it. The matchups doesn't matter. The talent is there. The usage is there, and we're going to go that this week. So let's break it down for you. I do have Justin Jefferson, number one. He's going to chase some numbers there. Did not have a very good game. We know that. The clunker in the fantasy football championship for many of you against the Packers of Jair Alexander. He got the gritty done on him. That was not cool. But this Bears secondary, they're going to lose another guy, I think, this week. Jalen Jones, they already are down a lot of players here. So looking at the secondary, they're just giving up points and yardage at will, whether it's running or passing. The only concern here is that the Bears are so bad against the run, this could be just a Dalvin Cook smash spot. But I think this is a Vikings tune-up spot. As I mentioned, they did not look good at all offensively in Green Bay last week. So I think you'll see Justin Jefferson, the squeaky wheel, get the grease here and really try to chase some big numbers. So that really hurt his chances of the 2,000 yards for the season last week. So he'll look to make amends in this final game. And the Vikings won a little bit of momentum going to the playoffs, knowing that they are not going to have that home field advantage the first round bye. Jamar Chase, we'll see what we get from the Bengals. Right now, they're favored in this game, so they're expecting to play some of their key guys in the game against the Ravens. And there's a little bit of seeding on the line, 2 versus 3 potentially for the Bills and the Bengals. And that's not insignificant because you could get the 7 seed, the last team in the playoffs that's fighting for that spot, whether it's the Patriots or Dolphins or Steelers limping in, or you get the 3, which makes it a little bit tougher, maybe facing the Ravens game. So I think the Bengals want to try to avoid that if possible here and not have that rematch. A little bit careful they have to be because I don't think they want to show too much. I don't think the Ravens want to show too much. But the biggest thing is the Ravens are not going to be starting Lamar Jackson here. So I still think Bengals are going to be rather competitive, try to win this game, to feel better about just winning the division in the right way. And I think they'll come out and play that way a little bit. And they need to tune up as well after not playing last week against the Bills a full game. So that's something to also keep in mind. So it's that balance of rust versus rest for a lot of these teams in Week 18. All right, CeeDee Lamb comes in there. He's in a good spot against the Commanders for sure. He can really eat up that secondary. You look at the Devontae Adams, he gets the Chiefs at home, so there should be some high volume there with Jared Stidham coming off a big game against the 49ers secondary. You have A.J. Brown getting the Giants with Jalen Hurts likely to return this week, so that's going to help A.J. Brown's value. That game against the Giants have Adoree Jackson banged up. I think they'll be careful with him and everyone else in the secondary as the Giants are locked in the number 6 seed. Tyreek Hill is a tough matchup against the Jets, however you look at it, between Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, and Michael Carter. But you look at that situation, it's Tyreek Hill. They need a lot of him, and they're going to give volume. My one concern is you're not going to have Tua Tagovailoa. Will we have Teddy Bridgewater? That's a little bit of concerning situation there, especially against a tough defense. If it's Skylar Thompson, they're also exploring other options off the roster. So it'll be interesting to see who starts. Right now, I think Bridgewater has a chance as he was limited in practice early in the week. Stephon Diggs, we'll see what the Bills do here. They might need a little bit of a tune-up against the Patriots and again, maybe try to hold that number 2 seed regardless of what happens with the Chiefs on Saturday. So I think the Bills are probably going to play some regulars in this one, and the Patriots will be too. So again, the tune-up Russ versus Russ comes into play, but I think Diggs will want to be in there. On Russ St. Brown, he definitely has to be a big factor for the Lions. They're fighting for their playoff lives here. It's not going to change if the Seahawks win and take the Lions out of the playoff picture. I think you'll still see Lions play hard to play spoiler against the Packers in that game. The Seahawks definitely are playing for something. DK Metcalf fully healthy this week against the Rams. Jalen Ramsey getting a little bit of rest. I wonder if they would not play him this week. I still think he'll be out there, but maybe not as motivated. Tyler Lockett going to probably return from the hand injury full strength. The biggest thing he's dealing with is a shin injury, but he should be out there as well. He's a gamer. Both these guys are going to try to put the Seahawks in position to get in the playoffs. Devonta Smith has had a big season. He's been very consistent for the Eagles, more consistent than A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert in this offense. Doesn't matter who the quarterback has been. He's also found it with Gardner Minshew here the past couple of weeks. So now Jalen Hurts returns. So Devonta Smith living up to his first-round expectations of last year, and 2 really top-flight receivers, Brown and Smith, have become. Amari Cooper battling a bit of a hip issue, but he'll be out there against the Steelers, trying to play spoiler for that game. Garrett Wilson has a very good matchup. Xavier Howard is probably going to miss the game for the Dolphins, so that's good news there. Speaking of the Dolphins, Jalen Waddle might be a little bit more active in the shorter passes against the Jets, so going there. Being modest with the Hill and Waddle, I think I would have bumped them higher if it wasn't that matchup, but still pretty high in the wide receiver 1 and 2 conversation. Brandon Ayuk, it's the Cardinals. He's an Arizona State kid. He's going to try to light the Cardinals. Their secondary is really beat up with no Byron Murphy Jr., Antonio Hamilton probably missing another game, and Marco Wilson battling a growing injury as well. Terry McLaurin, you like him against the Cowboys. They struggle a bit on the outside. Could get a little bit of Trayvon Diggs. DJ Moore, red hot with Sam Darnold, quarterback. You do have Marshawn Lattimore now playing for the Saints, but Paulson Adebo is probably going to miss the game. So a little bit of a matchup that they can create there. Chris Olave, no hamstring issue this week at all. So he gets the Panthers secondary that does not have J.C. Horn. He's out on IR with the wrist injury. We saw what happened with Mike Evans blowing up. We really thought that was going to be a big boost for Evans. We didn't think it was going to be 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, but that definitely came into play there last week. So Olave gets that matchup this week without Horn. You look at Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, a bit tough. You got Pat Surtain, but Allen can avoid him in the slot. Mike Williams might have his hands full a little bit, but I think the Chargers will want to tune up going to the playoffs. Christian Kirk has been quiet the last couple of weeks, but the Titans secondary really beat up. That's what you have to do to move the ball in the Titans. Remember, all these guys went off against the Titans in the first game, so Kirk should be locked and loaded. How about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin? Godwin, a little bit forgotten that week because of the way that Evans blew up, that Godwin had 100 yards as well. So you had 200 from Evans, you had 100 from Godwin. We haven't seen a game like that effective from the Buccaneers passing game all year. Now, I think they'll be careful with both of these guys because this game doesn't mean anything. They're the number 4 seed. But it is the Falcons. I think even in one half, a little bit of tune-up here for the playoffs, where they're going to play looks like the Cowboys in a 4-5 game. I think they'll want to get these guys out there a little bit. Tom Brady wants to play a little bit. Todd Bowles says they'll play a little bit of starters. So that's enough with Evans and Godwin, even a half or 3/4 that you can get the numbers there. But that's why they're on the lower end here as the must starts at 22 and 23 this week. So there you have a look at the wide receivers that are the easy plays this week, and no concerns there for sure. And we're excited about that. And look, week 18, there's a lot more on the line than we expected here, and that's good for fantasy football going forward. That it's going to be relevant for playing regular players and all that good stuff. So we're excited about that. We're excited that it's another opportunity to get in on betting action for this weekend for the regular season, full slate of games for the last time. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball World Cup, we've got it all there covered for you at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We know you do. You're listening to Locked On Fantasy Football and a lot of the great shows here on the Locked On Network, including Locked On NFL. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information at BetOnline. Head to the website today. It's betonline.net or use a mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we will continue the show on Locked On Fantasy Football in a moment. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversations with biggest NFL stories. This week, we've been tracking the health of Damar and Hamlin, and hopefully more positive signs will come out of that as we wait to hear about his progress. Plus, in-depth analysis of the biggest games of NFL key predictions every Friday and Monday. Local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes, so good to hear the breakdown as all the teams will finish their regular season here this weekend on Sunday night. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let us continue the show. We're looking at some wide receivers that are a little bit on the brink here. I did like Gabe Davis quite a bit against the Bengals. I do like him a lot against the Patriots. Their secondary is really banged up, folks. I mean, you look at some of the situations there. I mean, all the Joneses are basically hurt. Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, Jack Jones, Jalen Mills also hurting. So that's the entire secondary. So Gabe Davis did score in the first matchup. Didn't do all that much, but the Bills didn't really do much in that game because they won on a Thursday night rather easily. Didn't have to do much. So I do like Gabe Davis this week in there and getting a little tune-up I would expect for the Bills. Drake London, I think you'll get some backup secondary players. Carlton Davis has got a shoulder injury of Jamel Dean. He's also hurting. So I think the Buccaneers are going to be judicious about anyone who's a little bit banged up this week. So Drake London should face a shell of the secondary, and that's going to help with some garbage time with Desmond Ridder. He's been dominating their targets without Kyle Pitts and with Ridder in the lineup for replacing Marcus Mariota. Michael Pittman, he's a good big slot guy when needed. He's also a good underneath possession receiver. They get the Texans cover 2, the Colts do this week. So Pittman's going to be relied upon a lot. I know it's not Nick Foles, it's not Matt Ryan. We're looking at Sam Elger, but Elger should treat Pittman as a bit of a security blanket this week, potentially with Kylan Granson. I think they're best of the 3 tight ends missing this game. Marquise Hollywood Brown, I do like this for him with David Blau potentially starting again. Colt McCoy missed another practice here with a concussion. Blau did push the ball downfield a little bit more. He also didn't have DeAndre Hopkins, and he's missed practice early in the week. You also are worried about Robbie Anderson, which would open things up for Brown as well for those downfield shots. He's got a back injury, Anderson does. So you're looking at that situation. Blau seemed to favor Brown and the rookie tight end Trey McBride here filling in for the Cardinals last week there in that matchup. So that's a player that we definitely like with the situation. Christian Watson, I do like him quite a bit to have more of a Christian Watson rookie type game against the Lions. He had a hip injury last week. I don't think he was 100%. He did get in limited practice, so that's a little bit of progress from where he was in the middle of the week last week. So let's hope he can be more at full speed. They need him, and this matchup is great against the Lions secondary. Deontay Johnson battling a hip issue, but he'll play, and I really like the way Deontay Johnson is starting to kind of feel himself a little bit more with Kenny Pickett. And the Browns secondary, Denzel Ward battling a shoulder injury, so he could be out. That could help Deontay Johnson, the route running and effectiveness in that game with the Steelers, potentially playing for a playoff berth. Zay Jones, the Titans secondary, mentioned that them being a little bit beat up. I think you'll have to see Trevor Lawrence throw the ball a little bit more this week. You can't run on the Titans as easily. So more passing, that should help Zay Jones. This one, Jahan Dotson, it doesn't really matter where the quarterback is. And keep in mind, it's rookie and rookie this week. If it's Sam Howell there, that means it's rookie versus rookie. And so no Carson Wentz, no Taylor Heineke. They're going to check out Sam Howell. That was one quarterback update we had. You notice we won't have any Bears recommendations this week because they just switched to Nathan Peterman. So two more starting quarterbacks this week. So scratch out Justin Fields there with Trevor Siemian hurt. It has to be Peterman. And the Commanders are just going to roll the dice here and see what they have in Sam Howell, I guess, in the final week. So Howell and Dotson, that could be a pretty good connection. Dotson, I think, again, slowly is going to take over as that number one ahead of McLaurin. I think he's that good, and it doesn't really matter. It's a good matchup against the Cowboys. I'm going there. Traylon Burks, a little bit of a growing issue popped up there, but he is the number one receiver. That's why they started Josh Dobbs. It's kind of the Blouse situation in Tennessee. They just didn't want a quarterback that's limited and going to have to run all the time. They just didn't want that situation like a Trace McSorley type thing. So same thing. They didn't want a Malik Willis limitation. They need some of the passing game. Traylon Burks should get heated up with Dobbs again this week. You look at Kadarius Toney. He's getting involved. He's the leading receiver for the Chiefs last week. Great matchup against the Raiders this week, and I think he's going to be the main guy. And they want to get him a little bit warmed up for the playoffs to make a few more big plays to help Jerick McKinnon in the open field. So if you like Kadarius Toney as a play this week for sure. Now let's look at the sit side here at this position. It's tough. Again, we're going to navigate through some players that may have limited roles. Juju Smith-Schuster, I'm not feeling it too much. I think the Raiders are a little bit better in the slot, actually, than on the outside. Kadarius Toney, I know, is kind of interchangeable inside-outside, but Juju can play the big slot. I'm just not feeling his usage here as they involve the tight ends and Toney a little bit more. I'm also not feeling Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton against the Chargers. This Chargers secondary is playing really well. Sutherland has no more injury issues there, but they should get the focus and the attention here. There's no tight end consistency. Greg Dulcich is on IR. They have Eric Saubert and Eric Tomlinson hurt. So you're going to see a little bit of Albert Okwuegbunam there in that game against the Chargers, but I just don't think the Broncos are going to do much in this matchup overall with Russell Wilson. The Chargers defense is playing really well and have Joey Bosa back in the mix. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he was the guy favored by Deshaun Watson early and that also return touchdown against the Texans. He had the touchdown last week, but not doing a lot here. The Steelers have a secondary to slow him down for sure with the big plays. So it'll be a lot more of Amari Cooper. DJ Chark on the outside, he may not be able to avoid the Jair Alexander matchup on the outside. So that's usually where Alexander lines up. He could potentially try to contain him on Ross St. Brown, but I don't like DJ Chark's chances. As also their passing game is ineffective with Jared Goff on the road. We've talked about that. Brandon Cooks probably playing his last game for the Texans. He probably wants to find yet another team, maybe a contending team. I'm not feeling it against the Colts, although Stephon Gilmore's a little bit banged up. No Kenny Moore, he's on IR, but I'm not trusting Brandon Cooks at all in that matchup. Michael Gallup, I'm not going to go there. Really no Noah Brown. Really, other than Dalton Schultz for CeeDee Lamb and the running backs, you really can't go there consistently. I don't like Adam Thielen. I don't think they're going to need him much at all in that game against the Bears. So a lot of Jefferson, a lot of running game, I think, for the Vikings there, and then maybe a little bit of TJ Hawkinson. So that's what's really happened there. George Pickens, I actually don't like the matchup against the Browns because I think they'll try to contain him in the big plays, and Deontay Johnson's route running is a little bit better. There's Jacoby Myers, not going to play him against the Bills and that secondary. Nope, not at all. He's also battling through a shoulder injury, so we don't want that. Van Jefferson was the leading receiver for the Rams last week, but not going to trust him against that Seahawks secondary on the outside with Tariq Woolen and Mike Jackson. All right, let's get into the tight ends now that we do want to play this week. So move away from those wide receivers that don't have the greatest matchups. Travis Kelce, for sure, great matchup against the Raiders. They need to win that game, motivated, all things line up for Travis Kelce. George Kittle gets a great matchup against the Cardinals. So these are two great matchups for the two best tight ends in fantasy now this season. Kelce and Kittle back where they should be. So really like Kittle to keep it going here with Brock Purdy in this matchup against the Cardinals. Darren Waller also steps into a good spot. He's had two very nice games in a row, one with Derek Carr, one with Jarrett Stidham. Stidham and Waller had a pretty good convection here. Against the Chiefs, I do like him. So Darren Waller resurfacing at the right time in fantasy at the end, and this is promising for next year when he potentially could have a big quarterback change to maybe Tom Brady, but somebody other than Derek Carr is going to be thrown to Darren Waller, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Mark Andrews, looking at him against the Bengals, they'll have to use him a little bit. I think they'll be careful about his usage, but they need him as the top receiver. He's coming off his first 100-yard game in quite a while last week. Dallas Goedert is also going to be a key part of the Eagles' game plan against the Giants, who have given up more to the tight end. The Titans have struggled against the tight end all season here, so former Giant Evan Engram can have some success in that matchup. Key target. I have TJ Hawkinson down a little bit. The Bears are actually pretty good against the tight end. And again, this is a Jefferson Cook show, so I don't know how much you're going to need the peripheral extra players here this week. Dalton Schultz, the Commanders have been pretty decent against the tight end. They gave up one massive game to George Kittle, but everyone else contained, including David Njoku, whom they erased last week. So going there. Now let's look at the players that we like a little bit after them. We will do that after this break here, and we will also break down the defenses there, start and set advice, the rankings for that position in our final segment on Locked On Fantasy Football. It is a new year, and we are trying to make a commitment to eating healthier. Everyone should. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then man, I've got just a thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious, you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. They come in unbelievably great flavors such as churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. What's even better, they're healthy for you. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's great news. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Clubs, run in and grab a 13-bar box of our hit flavors there, Built Bar, brownie, batter, and churro. You can thank me later. So it's exciting. Their Built is even more accessible to you in the new year. Check it out, Built.com, or at your local Walmart or Sam's Club to get your hands on a delicious Built Bar multiples here for 2023. All right, time to close the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We'll get into those tight end starts and sits here. Taysom Hill, is he a tight end? Do we care? Is he qualifying? Yes. And we also have Juwan Johnson hurting. So someone in the Saints has to make some big plays here. He's been touching the ball quite a bit, passing the ball, running it more. He's involved there behind Alvin Kamara with Mark Ingram on IR, Dwayne Washington not playing. So Taysom Hill is essentially their complimentary back to Alvin Kamara at this stage. So going there, you have Dawson Knox as a play against the Patriots. He did have success against them the first time. The Patriots are a little bit more vulnerable against a tight end. Pat Freiermuth should be involved against the Browns. The Browns are vulnerable there, and Logan Thomas did have some success against them last week, so that's good for Freiermuth with Kenny Pickett. The Seahawks, the cheat code, Tyler Higbee. So you should figure that he's going to get some key targets here from Baker Mayfield in that game. We saw Tyler Conklin come through. Speaking of Tyler Conklin, I like him against the Dolphins this week with Mike White targeting him quite a bit. Cole Kmet, good matchup for him. He's the leading receiver now. I think you'll see Nathan Peterman rely upon him quite a bit. So no Justin Fields, a little bit more from the running game with David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. Dante Pettis should play this week, but they're banged up at receiver. So Cole Kmet has another good chance to score a touchdown this week. Gerald Everett, also good chance to score a touchdown. He was involved a little bit more in the passing game. They're playing the Broncos. Broncos have really struggled against the tight end of late and gave up other tight end touchdowns to the Chiefs last week. So that's that. David Njoku, not going to play him. He's kind of disappeared as Deshaun Watson has been more Amari Cooper-centric. The Steelers have been pretty good against the tight end. Juwan Johnson, not going to play him. Even if he's healthy against the Panthers. The Panthers have been pretty decent against the tight end. No Fant, and the Rams have also had some decent coverage there, but it's also the dealing with Colby Parkinson and the wide receivers there. So for no Fant, so fade Fant. Hunter Henry will be alone here with Jonas Smith probably missing another game with a concussion, but I'm not trusting him against the Bills. Hayden Hurst, not going to trust him against the Ravens either. So HH and HH, not going to go no-no on those guys with all the competition for targets. Now with Devontae Parker potentially returning to New England, the Bengals also having Trenton Irwin being involved with Tyler Boyd. Trey McBride, it was a good matchup last week, and he came through, not this week against the 49ers. So parked Trey McBride. K. Dotton, I don't think he's going to play enough. He's a little bit banged up. He's okay now, but he had the injury report status last week, so not going to play him against the Falcons here this week. All right, let's look at the defenses that we want to start for sure this week. Well, you start with the 49ers against David Blau at home. They're going to bring it, make some big plays. So rebound, it was not very good against Jarrett Stidham. They did have the 2 interceptions late to kind of save them, but otherwise giving up all those points. I think they'll want to tune up performance here for sure this week. So looking at the 49ers, number 1, Bills at home against the Patriots, like that matchup against Mac Jones. Chargers are red hot, playing the Broncos on the road, and Russell Wilson, they can create some problems there. The Cowboys facing Sam Howell, this is even better for them than expected with Taylor Heineke or Carson Wentz. It's still a very good matchup for the Cowboys to tune up. Eagles probably going to get Tyrod Taylor and a lot of Giants backups in that game, so that helps as they're trying to win to get in the playoffs. And the Jets could see Skylar Thompson. They could see Teddy Bridgewater. Either is a good matchup as we saw the Jets rip the Dolphins with that type of quarterback scenario in the first meeting. All right, let's go to the Jaguars getting Josh Dobbs. Dobbs is a little bit better than Malik Willis, but the Jaguars defense can make some big plays. We saw Rayshon Jenkins and Tyson Campbell make some pick sixes of late, so they are having a big play quotient raised there for the Jaguars. Colts should have a little bit of success at home against the Texans this week. Seahawks looked really good last week against the Jets, and now they get the Rams, and it's a good spot for sure at home against Baker Mayfield. The Packers, the primetime emotional bump, they're the night game on Sunday. I like that situation there. So like the Jaguars on Saturday night, like the Packers at home. On Sunday night, Steelers defense playing really well. Hopefully Minka Fitzpatrick can play and make some big plays there. But looking at that situation, it's really good here for the Steelers. The Bengals also, with Tyler Huntley not seeing a lot from the Ravens, so potential for the Bengals to make some big plays at home there in that matchup. Now, defenses I don't like. Chiefs, I'm not going to trust them. We saw what happened with the 49ers last week on the road against the Raiders and Stidham. Raiders can put up some points in that game. Browns, I'm not trusting them at all against Kenny Pickett. Saints, I know the Panthers seem down Sam Darnold, but I'm not going there. Same thing with the Panthers against Andy Dalton on the road. I'm going to avoid the defense in that game. You look at the Dolphins, I'm not going to play them against the Jets as they can be a little bit more competitive, the Jets, and protect the ball in that game. And the Vikings, just not a very good defense. I think the Bears will have some success moving the ball. I'm just not totally sold the Vikings are going to tee off on Nathan Peterman here, even in that situation being a road game this week in Chicago. All right, there you have it. There's a breakdown of your wide receivers, tight ends, and streaming defenses based on the matchups and other factors here for week 18 in fantasy football. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For a second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you the local insights you love to national spotlight with daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories. And again, big story this week covered really well on the network. Your Damar Hamlin and that scary situation on the field in Cincinnati. And our hosts have been all over it this week. So listen to all these great shows, including Locked On NFL. It's available on YouTube, just like this show, and wherever you get your podcasts. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Have a great rest of your day. We'll check you out Friday with some DFS advice and injury updates you need to know going into Week 18.